Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted. I also love it when people leave comments. I love to hear what you think, ideas for videos, stuff like that is great. One of the more frequent things that people ask me about is to see more about my polishing process. And I deliberately leave that out of the videos because I wanted to show more of the actual creation part. And I did do a general polishing video way back at the beginning of my channel. So today I wanted to talk about one aspect of it, and that is I wanted to talk about some of the more important types of bits that I use for my rotary tool. And especially for beginners, I think it's confusing. There's tons of different kinds of bits and you don't really know what you need and what you don't need. And if you buy one of those beginner bit sets, a lot of times you get a lot of stuff that you really don't need. And so it's nice to have an idea what you should purchase. So I'm going to talk about 5 or 6 different important bits that I use all the time on my rotary tool. So that's going to be our focus today. I wanted to thank some groups of people, my patrons over on Patreon. I have 2 new ones. I have Michelle and Gregory M. Thank you so much for signing up. I really appreciate your support. I think you'll find that the group over there is super nice and very helpful and full of knowledge. So they've created a great environment over there. I just love all of the kindness and special skills and knowledge that all of you have. So thank you for that. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 12,200, I believe. And that's amazing, and I really appreciate all of your support as well, including the kind comments. Sometimes people leave really moving comments, and I really appreciate that. It makes it easier to, when I'm feeling tired or worn out, to know that I'm helping somebody somewhere out there. So thanks for that. I also appreciate the influx of cash that I get occasionally from people, which is the buy me a coffee and the super thanks. Those kind of things really help with the rising cost of materials. If you follow the silver market, it's pretty high right now, so it's hard to buy materials at the moment. All right, well, let's get started on this video. So this is one of my design idea books that I draw my designs up in. I also actually have a new one on the site, or two new ones that I included on the backs of them, some various conversion charts. I think this one's particularly useful. It's got fractions of an inch, which goes to decimals, and then to millimeter measurements too, equivalencies. There's a new one that goes from gauges to millimeters too, because I know a lot of people overseas don't use the wire gauges, they use millimeters. So I think that's useful. But they have this nice grid pattern in them on the inside, and that helps me to keep things kind of symmetrical, as I'm not terribly good at drawing things. So, however, I have found it's useful to draw up my designs in advance. I tend to get a better outcome then. So this one doesn't have a lot of drawings because it's mostly an outline for what I'm going to talk about today, and some of the various bits that I find pretty handy. So let's get started on that. The 2 first ones that I want to talk about are this type here, which have a little screw that screws into the top of them, and it allows you to mount a whole bunch of different kinds of things. And this other type of screw tip where it's just got some big broad threads going on there, and you can feed something onto that. So this one is more versatile than this one, I think. What I use it for primarily is there's 2 different kinds of grinding wheels that I use really frequently. One is this knife edge white silicone abrasive wheel. They color code these abrasive wheels with different colors to indicate the different grits that they are. The white ones are the coarse ones, and I like the knife edge ones because they get into in between 2 wires really easily, so you can really smooth out a solder joint there that way. And as they wear down, they're still very useful because you can do the insides of rings and things with them. So there's a number of different ones like this. I like the ones that have the skinny little screw that'll fit through stuff like this. And so I also like the ones that have a little bit longer screws, so you can put pretty big different kinds of bits on there other than just this kind. So that's one of the silicone abrasive bits I use. Like I said, they make all different grits, but I use primarily just 2. I use the really coarse one, and then at the very end of my project, when I need to clean up some tops of the bezel or tips of prongs or something like that. I use the blue fine one, which is more of like a polishing bit than a grinding bit almost, and that'll put a nice smooth surface on it and get rid of any kind of last little small scratches or file marks. So it's a good way to clean up the top of your bezel, or the top of some prongs, or some spot where it's kind of hard to get to. Oh, by the way, these come in all different shapes and sizes too, but they're all useful. I just find that I use these the most, probably the knife edge ones. As far as that's mostly for grinding stuff away and cleaning the outsides of bezels. Let me show you what I do a lot of times with the bezel. This is actually a ring I made a while back, and I broke the stone when I was polishing it, but I'll use it as an example here. So I find that a lot of times, especially if you're a beginner, the outsides of your bezels are relatively rough looking, and it helps a lot if I use the underside of one of these, and you can kind of smooth it out just by running it back and forth like that. And that really goes a long ways to getting rid of some of those rough, bumpy parts, if you have them. You need to be real cautious though. If you go straight into it with a knife edge like this, these are relatively aggressive cutters, and so they will cut a slot right through your bezel if you're not careful. So that's why I'm using the underside, or you could use the top if you want to do like that. But either way, if you're using one of these, you want to make sure you're careful not to hit your stone, because they will, oftentimes they'll scratch a stone depending upon what it is. So be super careful. What they look like when they get used and worn down a ways is more like this, or even like this. And at this stage, when they're this big, they're great for getting on the insides of rings. Yeah? So it's easiest, by the way, to swap these out when they're in the rotary wheel, because it's already in the grip of the chuck there. So if I want to change this wheel for a smaller one, there's just so many different kinds of bits that it's nice to have kind of a starting place there. So here's another ring. If I wanted to smooth this one out on the inside of the band, this will get rid of some pretty coarse scratches. If you have tool marks or file marks or whatever. Do this until you get rid of all of it. I usually wear a mask when I'm doing this, just because it's producing silica dust. So you can get rid of really good scratches that way. Generally, I also wear a leather glove when I'm holding the piece in the hand that's holding the piece, because it gets relatively hot. Okay. So that's the other use for the ground down ones, is the insides of rings. I find it very useful for that. There's also lots of different kinds of felt wheels you can put on these when you really want to get into some nooks and crannies. This little, I think it's 1/8 of an inch wide, or I don't know, 3 millimeters, 2.5, 3 millimeters, and it's got a hole through it, and it's made out of felt. And you can get these in various places, any jewelry supply places will carry this kind of stuff. You can't generally get those abrasive silicone wheels at hardware stores and stuff, because they're kind of specialized. Alright, so with these, you'll be using a polishing compound. I have some little bit of white diamond here put on there, and this really does make for a pretty hot piece of jewelry, so you want to wear a glove when you're doing this, but run that around the inside with some of that white diamond compound. You can really make the inside shine pretty well. So, hopefully you can see that. I like these ones too. These ones are a little bit wide for that screw though, and this would be a situation where I might use one of these kind that have the screw tips on like that and just thread this on there. Like that, and do the same thing. If you're doing a wide band ring or something, this will get it done a little faster. So they make them in bigger sizes too, and also some various like pointed shapes and things like that. So those are handy to have. But I usually get by with mostly the knife edge silicone wheels and some sort of small felt wheels like this, or like that first one that I just showed you, like this here. So you can get most anywhere there. They do make these little floofy polishing wheels. I say floofy because they're not very durable, and you can use those, but they wear out very fast. And I do go through these pretty fast, and these knife edge wheels will get ground down relatively quickly, so you go through them reasonably quick. So, but these disintegrate pretty fast, but they do a pretty good job of getting a nice shine on there. So that was some different silicone abrasive wheels and some felt wheel options. Second, I find it super handy to have some different kinds of ball burrs. Okay? If you've never seen a ball burr, this is what a ball burr looks like. It's just a piece of steel, and it's got this ball at the end of it that has a whole bunch of sharp blades all facing in one direction slightly like that. So when it spins, it removes a lot of material. Ball burrs are great in that, like I said, they remove material quickly. And there's a specific instance that I use them quite a bit. If you're doing a ring that has some decorations around the outside of the stone, and you've soldered them down to some sheet like this, and you want to remove the excess sheet and just leave the decoration showing, this is a great way to remove that excess material if you don't want to have to file all of that out of there or saw it out. I soldered some balls onto this piece of sheet just so we'd have a bumpy edge here, and I want to show you what I would normally do to get that so the sheet doesn't show from the top anymore. First of all, I'd cut it off like this, and this is going to produce some heat, so I'm going to hold this like this, and I'm going to try and do this in front of the camera, but if you use the ball burr, I can remove the stuff between those pretty easily, but you just need to make sure to keep it below the balls there, below the edge of your design. Okay. You see how quickly you can kind of get that to match the ups and downs of whatever design you have on there. The trade-off on using a ball burr like that, and I like the bigger you can use for these kind of situations, the better, I think, because it's less likely to jump around on you. But that is the downside. If you're doing something that's going really fast and it gets caught on something, it can skip around a little bit, and then you can put a gouge somewhere where you don't want it. So it's probably safer to file those areas, but if you need to do it quickly, sometimes a big ball burr like that will work pretty well. And there's lots of different sizes of these. Here's one a little smaller. Some of these little ones are great for getting in this is a tiny one. Getting in and you have a little bit of solder somewhere where you didn't like it to be and it's hard to reach. Sometimes you can get in there and grind it away carefully with one of these if you're really careful. And it'll do it pretty quickly. So handy to have. They do get dull over time though. I had two of these big ball burrs that I brought over here. Here's the other one. I tried this one out and it's really dull, so I'm going to throw this one away. I think it's past its lifetime. Another thing is if you can use those to clean out the insides of holes and stuff like that. Third, it's useful to have a set of diamond burrs, and I found these on Amazon, I think, and they were cheap. They were like only $13 or $14. But the cool thing is they have all of these different sizes and shapes. Okay? Tons of different shapes for all different situations. Some that are very skinny, like that, which I don't know how many times I've had a hole that was just a little bit too small and I needed to make it slightly bigger. Just slide that in there and grind it, and it works its way down, and pretty soon you have a hole just exactly the size you need it. You know, this is similar to just a regular ball burr, except it's got a diamond bit on it, and so it's more like sanding stuff away than cutting stuff away, but it works pretty efficiently. So I use those all the time, and they're very handy. One of the situations I use them a lot in, on occasion, when I'm making a step bezel, this is actually, normally it would be a little bit taller on the inside. I just have one ring around there on the inside. Occasionally I'll cut the top of the bezel down too short, and I'll need to lower how the stone sits in the step bezel, and I'll need to remove some of that step. And using one of these to get inside of a bezel, this is a big one, but you could use a much smaller one if you need to. You can get in here and grind some of that away. Which will drop your overall, it'll drop the stone a little bit, so it'll make it so you have enough bezel to get over the girdle of a faceted stone. So that's kind of handy when you get a little overzealous on your filing on the top, which I do occasionally. So those are super handy. And like I said, they're economical, and so far these have lasted just fine. I've bought a lot more expensive tools that wore out faster, so I think that's a good deal. Finally, well actually almost finally, they make cup burrs, okay, and a cup burr looks like this. It's got a cutting edge, kind of like the ball burrs, except it's on a concave inside part. You put one of these and find a piece of wire here. I'm going to use a piece of 14 gauge square here. Very quickly it gets a nice rounded end on it. And that's nice when you have like a kind of a jagged cut end or something. So those are handy. And this one is kind of funny, but it's also, I'm a little bit serious about it too, because most, like if you buy a dremel or another rotary tool that comes with its own set of bits, oftentimes they'll have this rubber bit that fits these sanding rings on them, and you can swap them out after they wear out. But it's mostly for woodworking and stuff, I think, but I occasionally, and I used this on a Patron video yesterday to remove some material quickly. They work great for sanding away a lot of silver if I need to kind of sculpt something. So pretty efficient as far as removing material quickly. It's just they're pretty big, so you don't have a lot of fine control over where you're doing it. So, but if you need to like taper a wire or something and you don't want to have to file it for 20 minutes, sometimes doing something like this can speed up your process a bit. So those are kind of handy once in a while. Just as a review, the ones I use the most probably are these screw ones, where I could put various tips on them, whether it's the grinding bits like the knife edge white wheels, or whether it's a felt wheel for polishing the insides of rings or other situations. Ball burrs, which are useful for removing material quickly and getting into tight spots. A set of diamond burrs, which has all sorts of different shapes and is very economical and works very well for removing small bits of excess material. Without as much, they don't jump around quite as much as the ball burrs will on you. And cup burrs for rounding the ends of things. And finally, sanding bits, which kind of come with most rotary tools anyway, so those are pretty handy. So hopefully you find that a little bit helpful, and you'll have a better starting spot on where to buy some bits. So one thing I forgot to mention that I probably should mention is I showed you a handheld rotary tool that's just a standard model you can buy off the shelf. The particular one I had is a Dremel, and they're not a sponsor or anything. I use that all the time, but I also have a polishing machine because a handheld rotary tool like that generally doesn't have enough oomph to get a really good polish on something. It's great for cleaning up messes and removing material where you need to remove material, but for true polishing you either need to have like a foredom tool, which has a great big motor on it, and a flex shaft typically, or a polishing machine. And a polishing machine is much more efficient at polishing, in my opinion, than using a small bit like this at high speeds. So your typical hardware store rotary tool just won't have the horsepower to really give things a good polish. Your typical hardware store rotary tool is not going to have enough horsepower to give yourself a good polish. It's not going to have enough horsepower to give your pieces a great polish, so you need to have something with a little more oomph. So, all right. Okay, well, I hope you found some useful information in this video. If you did, make sure to hit the like button and check out a few of my other videos. I have over 330 videos on the channel now. There's almost certainly something useful that you can find there, and I'd love it if you'd view a few of those and then subscribe to the channel. There's also some important links in the video description down below. There's a link to my tool affiliate, Pepe Tools. If you click that and buy something, it helps me and helps Pepe, and hopefully helps you too, because they have some nice stuff. There's a link to my new ebook that I just published, which is a guide basically to all of the 2023 videos that I put out on the YouTube channel. It includes a drawing of my original sketch, the picture of the final piece, a list of the materials needed to make the project, a difficulty rating, some notes I wrote about the piece as far as like, was it hard, were there any things that I ran into challenges with, what might I do different if I was to do it again, stuff like that. And then finally a link right to the video, so you can watch the video over and over again if you need to. It's a great way to be able to access a whole bunch of different projects really easily, so I hope you'll check it out. There's also a link to the Buy Me a Coffee, my Patreon, and a few other places there too. So check those out, and thanks for watching today. I appreciate it. Take care. Happy silversmithing.